Welcome to the Integrate and Ignite podcast. To put it mildly, recruiting, hiring, managing, and retaining today's workforce presents some rather difficult challenges. My guest on this episode is Steve Urban, CEO of Riderflex. Join us as we tackle this thorny subject and come up with some inspired takeaways that will help you staff your business for success. Whether it's understanding the expectations of millennials or creating workplace culture that combines the professional with the personal, understanding how the landscape has changed is vitally important. Steve and I dive into and ask the question, how can you hire, lead, and inspire the best people for your team? From the role marketing plays in recruiting, tips for interviewing, ways to bring remote and gig workers into the virtual fold, and what kinds of employees you look for when you're a startup versus an established business, Steve and I are talking about it all. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Integrate and Ignite podcast. I am so excited to have Steve Urban join us today. We've been kind of joined at the hip here for a little while. We both grew up in the area. We're both the exact same age. We both graduated at the same time. And so there's that fun side of how Steve and I know one another, but you are one of the forethought leaders when it comes to hiring and recruiting. And that's what we're really going to hone in on today and talk a lot about. So before we get there, Steve, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what
how you doing?
Really.
Thank you, Lori. How are you today? Are you good?
I'm good. I'm great. It's so good. Like I said, it's so good to see you.
I like your studio. I like the studio. I like the look. It looks great. It looks awesome.
It is fun.
How many videos have you launched? Am I the first one?
So No, you're going to actually be the fourth or fifth, but we launch on April 25th. So by the time this show launches, there will have been a few already out.
Okay, very good. Well, that's cool. Yeah. I'm glad you're doing video now. I mean, you got to look for it. I mean, you look like a famous actress anyway, so you should have been doing video the whole time.
You are so kind. And you know my backstory too, that I studied broadcast journalism and decided not to do it. But here I am. So my broadcast journalism debut through my own podcast. So thank you.
That's cool. And we're both entrepreneurs. We're both business owners. I mean, we got a lot in common. And you were on the Riderflex podcast too. I'm trying to remember when you were on our podcast. Was it a year, 2 years?
I mean, it's definitely, it was pre-COVID. Wasn't it?
Wow.
Yeah,
probably.
I know.
Yeah, probably.
It was pre-COVID. So I know it's like that whole time period's an absolute blur. So
it was pre-COVID. Damn, that was like 3 years ago.
I know. Cow. Yeah.
Wow.
I know. Well, anyways, it's always such a joy to talk to you. And
same.
We're going to talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial spirit today, but we're also going to share some insights. Hiring right now is such an issue. It is so tough. And we're going to talk about some of those insights today as well. So tell me more, remind our audience about that entrepreneurial, spirit and grit and path that you're traveling down.
So I was a wholesale retail executive for most of my career. I, moved up through the ranks and ended up being a CEO and president for a couple of $40 million wholesale retail companies. And, I did that until I was, 49 years old. And so that was most of my career. I was an operations kind of executive. That was my functional expertise before I hit C-suite. But, as I got older, I always kind of dreamed about doing something on my own. That was always there. My dad was an entrepreneur. He had his own oil field roustabout business and several other businesses that he tried when I was growing up. So he kind of had that spirit. And so I always wanted to try something. I was working in DC, flying back and forth from Denver to DC every week for 3 years, which was
not fun.
Yeah. And when that contract was up, I wanted to do something that I had ownership in. I wanted to do a startup. I wanted to do something that I could do remotely because I wanted to work from anywhere. That was always kind of a dream. And I wanted to do that way before remote was cool, before COVID.
Yeah, you are cool.
Yeah. And so I wanted to do something remote, and then I wanted to just, do something that I was kind of passionate about, and hiring and interviewing and placing people in the right positions. I mean, I had done that for so many years, right? As a manager or as an executive.
Right.
And I loved doing that. I always liked interviewing people, and I felt like I was good at that. And then I kind of tied all that together with having dealt with recruiters and recruiting firms, meaning I hired them right as a third party, or I had them internally that worked for me when I was an executive. So I'd been around and dealt with a bunch of executives, and quite frankly, I knew most of them were not good.
Yeah.
So, and I always thought of that as low hanging fruit. And so I thought, well, damn, if I just do a good job and execute on recruiting, we'll get business. And I had a pretty good network. And so that's how it started.
That's great.
I left that executive job and talked my friend Scott Kegris into joining me. And
here you are.
And here we are. Yeah.
How many episodes are you into Riderflex at this stage?
At the podcast? So yeah, we have along with the recruiting firm, which is our day job, we have the podcast, and we are 370. Not as many as you.
That's great.
I think you've done like 400 and something. Almost 500,
I think we're probably like a couple years ahead of you, a year and 18 months ahead of you.
Yeah,
with the number
370. It started out with me giving job interviewing tips and career advice, like little short segments, and then people were like, "Hey, I'll come in on your show and talk about that." And I was like, "Okay, well,
there you go,
cool."
Yeah, all the rest is history. So as we've established, recruiting and hiring and even retention is such a big issue today. Yeah. And the cracking the nut is just something that's very difficult. If you've got an in-house department trying to crack it, that's hard. They typically find themselves needing to hire, recruiting firms to help, or they might have a recruiting team internally. But when it comes to a specialty hire, like a CEO or something, they might hire a recruiting firm. Mm-hmm. So there are all these sort of things that are happening right now. And we've got a workforce that is very different today than it ever has been. We've got a lot of younger people entering the workforce that just have a different mindset about what 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week to get the job done is.
Yes.
So you combine all this, you combine the layoffs that are happening right now. What is your POV about what corporations need to be doing? It does not matter if you're in the startup space and you just received an $8 million tranche, or if you're an established business. We are all facing the same issue. What is it that we need to know that we may not know going into this?
From a retention perspective, with the stats low, right? People leave jobs after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, it's terrible. Turnover's terrible, even at the management level, and not just associate level. I think retention these days all comes down to the culture and atmosphere that the company builds, and what is it like to work there? Not that it has to be ping pong tables and goofing off, 2 days a week, but just in general, millennials specifically, they want to enjoy working there. They want to enjoy the atmosphere. They want to work with people that they like to be around, and they want to have work-life balance.
Right. So let's just stay there for a second, because nothing adds up to me. Okay, Steve. So they want all that, but yet they want to work from home. So
they want to work from home, and they want to work remotely.
Exactly. So how do you create a culture? I mean, you can only have so many martini parties at 4:00 in the afternoon via Zoom. You can only dictate that the team is in the office 1 day a week, in a shared space. And there's, the fabric of that, the weaving of what it takes to actually build
interaction and communication between team members is at an all-time low because what they want is to work remote.
Yeah. It is tougher a little bit on remote, but it can be done. So Riderflex has been remote since the beginning, and we've been doing it for 7 years, and we've always been remote. And if you go check our Glassdoor reviews, we have super high scores around our company culture. So I think you can do it. I think it's everything from scheduling expectations. Do you let them work when they want to? Do you let them work from wherever they want? Do you have too many meetings? When you do have meetings, is there small talk and personal conversation time built into the front or back of the meeting, so it's not just all business and you can get to know your people? Do you have Slack and other tools set up so that it is okay for them to be personable and not just talk business? And do you let them do that? And then you can have the virtual happy hours, but we don't do that very often because we generally, when we're having meetings, we always try to do video. And I think that's really important, by the way. If you're a remote company, you should almost, I hate to use the word enforce, but I recommend that your culture be like, hey guys, we want everybody on video because we want to see your face. We want to see your facial expressions. We let, if they have kids, if they have dogs, if they watch little ones and, the kid pops up on the screen with them or whatever, and they have to mute, like, that's all cool with us. And that all ties back to culture, I think. And so, you can have a good culture doing it remotely if you let it be personal and not just all professional, I think. And I think building time in for that is important.
Is there a size business that you feel it works, employee count that works better
question.
with?
I think that can work well with big businesses too, as long as the meetings aren't with too many people. Now, if you have a hands-on company meeting, that's different deal. But siloed groups, not siloed groups, but specialty groups where there's 10 people on a team and they're having a meeting, just keep it human and not all just robotic professional. I think that helps a bunch. But you're right. Today, people they do want work-life balance. And I don't mean goof off. I mean, like, they don't want to work 75 hours a week. And they do want to have the ability to work remotely if they can. Like, those are two important things. And companies that are fighting that are losing out on talent.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Our talent within the agency, because we do have remote workers, is stronger than it ever has been. And one of our team members, very valued team members, moved during COVID to Tennessee, and we kept him employed. I mean, we love him. So, so we've got team members, full-time team members in, 3 or 4 different states right now.
That's awesome.
And so there's that piece of it, but there is also, do you see companies like making a rule of, okay, if you live within 25-mile radius of the company, you need to be in the office 2 days a week or 3 days a week? Or
my personal view on this is, and I've done lots of podcast episodes on this topic, here's how I can answer it. I truly believe that we will look back on society at some point, and our grandchildren are going to be like, we used to make people get in a car and drive an hour to a building just to open up a laptop and sit in a cubicle. like really? We did that? Like, we did that? Why'd we do that? That's my view on it. Now, and I do think too, as the highways are populated and things like this, I mean, it frees up the ability for the guys and girls that do have to drive, like the delivery truck drivers, the construction workers, the oil field workers, the plumbers, the people that do actually need to be on the road. It gives them the ability to do that. And it frees up the highways of Mary driving an hour and 15 minutes just to, get in a building and close the door and open a laptop. I mean, I really think we're going to look back and go, that was dumb. Why were we doing that? So, and I think managers that are pushing against that are missing out on talent, and they're gonna, and I always tell our clients are gonna be like, well, I want this person to come to the office. I'm like, okay, so you want me to find this specialty candidate with all these skill sets in, BFE, Oklahoma, where there might be like one person in that county that has that skill set.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if you let me recruit from the US, I can find you several candidates that are really perfect for you. So anyway,
Do you
that's
think
my
it's
rant.
affecting efficiency at all? Like I take
No.
a look at, we're a creative environment, right?
Yeah.
And for us to ideate together and, innovate new ideas and concepts in a conference room and
Yeah.
take a look at the human emotion behind interacting to an idea or not can be lost. And we've got the whiteboards on Zoom and all that
Yep.
sort of stuff. So, I mean,
Yeah.
so we're doing it. And even our innovation sessions, we send everyone out for 20 minutes to just decompress, and they take a look at the surroundings behind them and journal, things that they hear, smell, taste, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And we still have our out-of-state team members do that. So they still come in refreshed and ready to go. But, are you seeing it impact creativity and innovation?
If anything, I think your remote work, here's the deal. The remote worker is happier.
Yeah.
So
Innovation is better. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, they're just in a better mood. They're happier with their life. They're happier with their families. They're happier with their hobby. They're just happier. I mean, and they're more willing to contribute. Like really, I mean, most humans, I'm not saying all, most humans really don't want to go into a building and then be like, okay, let's go to the conference room. And, they really don't want to do that. And you're talking to a guy that lived his whole career in these freaking conference rooms
on a plane too.
And on a plane, it's like, who wants to do that, man? Nobody wants to do, so anyway, that's my take.
Okay.
I don't want to take up your whole
No,
time.
I like it.
remote,
So
but,
let's talk a little bit more about recruiting.
Yeah.
We've talked about the benefits of, remote work as, a carrot.
Yes.
But and we've even, hired, incredible people that are remote, that are some of the strongest individuals we've ever had on the team, because the talent pool was just larger when we did that.
Yes.
But companies are still having difficulty recruiting. Why?
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the time, they aren't focused on matching candidate personality and style to the company culture.
Mm-hmm.
They make the mistake. Most companies make the mistake of going, okay, here's a job description with all these line items and keywords, and let's find a resume with those same keywords and experiences. Okay. Oh, wow. There's our person. And it's like, it's just so much more than that,
Yeah.
And so they're making these robotic algorithm decisions to hire somebody. And some companies are bypassing culture and they're saying, oh, personality and style and culture, none of that matters. I just want somebody that can do the job. That's why there's turnover, because here's a perfect example. I'll give you a perfect example. If a construction company, small construction company calls me, okay, and they got, I don't know, 15 guys working there. None of them are educated. They're all pretty hardcore construction guys, and they're like, hey, we want an admin person. And I'm like, okay, I'll help you find an admin person. And I go visit their office and I meet the CEO, and the CEO's pretty hardcore guy, cuss word every other language, whatever. Liquor cabinet on the side over in the office.
That's a brandy at play there.
I'm not going to put Mary, who was a librarian assistant and is very meek and timid with her style when I'm video interviewing her. And she happens to share with me her faith at the time. I don't ask questions about their religion or anything, but sometimes people just share this stuff.
Yeah.
And I get to know her. I'm like, I'm not going to put her in. I don't care if she's qualified from a skill set. I'm not going to put her in that environment because she'll be miserable.
Yeah, I agree. And
people miss that. People miss that.
Yeah, it's the subliminal stuff that you take a look at, that people don't pay attention to.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we really focus hard on that as much as we can. So that's part of the reason companies lose people. They just put people in the wrong environment, and then they're not happy. If the employees aren't happy, they
Yeah.
they don't like the environment. So I think that piece is one reason they have a hard time finding people. The other reason, and we could do a whole hour on it, so I'll just cut it short with the second reason, because there's a bunch of reasons. But the second primary reason they have a hard time finding people is because the hiring manager thinks that the resume and LinkedIn have to match perfectly before they'll even talk to them. And I always tell them, I'm like, look, Mrs. Hiring Manager, here's the deal. I've video interviewed, we've phone interviewed Johnny. I don't give a shit if he's missing a couple of line items that you wanted. You gave us 20 prerequisites here. We got 18 of them. Okay, I know he's missing 2, but I'm telling you right now, he matches your team and he matches your culture, and he's got a shit ton of potential. You need
They're
to talk.
shopping for perfection, and perfection does not exist.
That's right. And
Yeah.
and I always tell the hiring managers, I'm getting passionate about this because it's a really big one with me. I always tell the hiring manager, I always say, out of all the jobs you've gotten and all the promotions you've gotten, how many of them were you perfectly qualified for?
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
I mean, we sell, individuals short, we sell the company short in those situations.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
and everyone's, well, not everyone, but most people are very, very coachable.
Yes.
And every company has their secret sauce anyway. So training is going to be involved, period.
Bingo.
So,
Bingo.
to pass over people because of,
Oh, it drives me nuts.
so do you have like, okay, if he's 80%, we have to take a look at this guy. Is there a magic rule regarding?
Not necessarily a specific number, but there are times where our recruiters will present, and then of course I'm watching in the background, and they're like, okay, reject, and then I'll call the recruiter. I'm like, well, they're not even talking to him, like they're not even interviewing. I'm like, no. Then I will call the CEO and basically have this conversation. Like, come on, man. Like, what are you doing? Like, come on. Like, do you want to hire somebody or not?
So while we're talking about recruiting, I want to bring up a point, and really a case study that we deployed on behalf of an aerospace company that we do a lot of work with. And they have used outside recruiters and had tremendous success, even moving people into Colorado from outside. And we're pushing out the typical ad, now hiring. And we as an agency knew it wasn't the right approach, but it was, what they wanted at the time. And we let them know that if we really took more of a thematic approach with what it's like to work at this particular company, and really brought, follow the same rules that we do when we're developing any campaign out there regarding customer first, people first, human emotion, what can we get to stop, to get them a stop among a litany, of different images that they see day in and day out within LinkedIn in this particular case. So we developed a very, very thematic approach that brought these aerospace engineers back to when they were 5 years old, looking up at the moon saying, I'm going to be a part of that industry at some point in time with some, amazing messaging. So we put that out into the marketplace, several different versions that were very specific based on the position that we were hiring for, and the quality of the individual skyrocketed, no pun intended. We hired incredible people through taking a marketing approach that you do on the outside, on the inside, from an internal comms standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, and it worked magically.
That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah, I think that's brilliant. That's good. You ended up getting really qualified candidates that you probably never would have seen or never would have applied. So
well, and it was a numbers game, right? So if we wanted to bring the right people to the job page, but we also wanted to differentiate ourselves from the competition, which we were able to do. And this was a small 200-person aerospace company at the time, competing against 10,000 person company that everyone always longed to work for. And for the most part, we were winning.
Along with the great marketing of a job, the best recruiting firms are the one. We always post jobs too, but quite frankly, we post jobs primarily to just market our own company. I mean,
Right.
it's marketing for Riderflex. Do we sometimes get a candidate that quote applies? It happens.
Mhm.
And those are easy ones, but most of the time we're hunting people down. 80%
Right.
of the time it's recruiters on our team that are hunting people down and then selling the company, just like you did with your ad of it. They're having to sell the company. And that is the third reason people are not successful in hiring, because they throw out a job posting on Indeed and they just wait for people to apply and they don't do
Right.
anything else. Well, that's
So you bring up a really interesting point. What percent of recruiting are to people that are actually employed versus unemployed?
so there's a really kind of a misconception here. I've had clients tell me, they'll say, well, why are you posting? And I'll say, well, because there's millions of people on Indeed and LinkedIn, and most of them that apply are employed. I mean, the reality is unemployment in the country is, what is it right now? 3-4% or something
Right.
like that. So I'm always telling them, I'm like, do you think only those 3% of Americans that are unemployed, you think that's all that's on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
No, almost, I would say 90% of the people that apply to anything we put out are employed. Some of them are unemployed, but no, most people are employed. Most people are always actively looking for something else, believe it or
Yeah.
not. And that
Wow.
goes back to your original point where people
Mhm.
are just jumping jobs and they're not happy. I mean, yeah, most people are employed. No.
So you mentioned LinkedIn, and most of our clients are business to business, or for some of our enterprise clients that are either CPG or retail,
Mhm.
they've got 1,500 team members, and the C-suite level or manager level, they're going to be on LinkedIn for the most part.
Yeah.
Are there industries
Yeah.
that you see that do not have strong LinkedIn following, and you have to go to, the Indeeds of the world, the monsters, to make that happen?
Absolutely. We'll just, any trade skills job. I
Yeah.
mean, good luck on finding a plumber on LinkedIn.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, good. Electricians, plumbers, welders, construction. I mean, not none. Most of those folks are not on LinkedIn. Most of them are super busy and a lot of them are not on social media. They don't apply for jobs because if you're an electrician in Colorado, you can find work anywhere. Like
Yeah.
if you're not working as an electrician in Colorado, it's because you don't want to work. So my point is, they're all busy. They're not on social media. They're not applying for jobs. You've got to have trade skills, lists, databases, and different things where you can get phone numbers and emails and try to hunt them down.
Yeah.
They just don't apply. I mean, if we got a job, and let's say somebody called us tomorrow and said, hey, I need an electrician. If I put that post up on Indeed and LinkedIn, I mean, seriously, we would get almost nothing. We have to hunt them down. So those jobs, trade skills. And by the way, that's a whole nother topic. I think trade skills people are going to be more valuable than tech software engineers soon. I think AI and robots and chat GPT and these things are going to skyrocket even faster than they are. And the days of the software engineers being king of demanding whatever they want might be coming to an end, and plumbers are going to be demanding whatever they want
Yeah.
because those trade skilled people are going to be super valuable when AI can write code and we don't need engineers as much as we did.
Yeah.
That day is coming.
And Comcast technicians. We've been out of cable TV for 72 hours now. And we've been
Oh,
having
really?
to stream everything on our phone, and it's making us crazy.
See? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they can't, because techs are in super high demand. There's super high
Yeah.
demand. Yeah. So
I love it.
that's
I mean, it's a really interesting point. The other element here that has changed a lot over the last 3 years is the gig worker. I was a part of
yes.
a bunch of marketing to the National Beer Wholesalers Association, and they had a show a few years back, and they had a stat that they shared that was crazy. And by this might be off a little bit, listeners, but by 2040, no, by 2037, 64% of the population will be a gig worker on some level.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think eventually, I'm not an expert on this topic, so, but here's my opinion on it from a commoner perspective. I think you're going to see legislation and different things passed and squeezed to keep that from going too far, because it, from everything from taxes to a bunch of other reasons, I think the government wants full-time employees versus gig workers. I'm not an expert on
We
that.
need the tax base. I mean, they're still paying taxes at the end, but.
And I think companies are enjoying it because they don't have to worry a lot about HR. They can almost bypass all of the HR BS and just be like, hey, contractor, hey, yeah, we're done. Go away. We don't have to write you up. We don't have to write you up. We don't have to lay you off. We don't have to pay you unemployment. We don't have to do any of those things. And that's why companies like doing it. But that doesn't protect the worker as much as it probably should. So I think I think companies are taking advantage of that, and I think eventually you're going to see that tracked or at least viewed with a little more scrutiny. Companies are getting away with that more than they probably should.
And it's probably a mix, right? Like if you've got a 50-50 mix of FTEs or a 70-30 mix of FTEs to contractors. This company, Avocet's been around 43 years. We have always had at least 4, 5, 6, 10 contractors that we work with on an annual basis. That number, as we've grown, has doubled. We've probably got 30 contractors that we might call on today based on something very specialized, like, not just an illustration, but a specific type of illustration that we might call on someone for once a year. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of that pans out long term.
It will be. I think the challenge too, there's a bunch of challenges around it. One of the things that the companies face is you have hiring managers, you have supervisors that are managing full-time employees and managing contractors. And they're having to switch hats and be like, okay, now I can only talk to the contractor a certain way. I can only, because there's certain rules about contractors. And then, now I'm talking to John. Oh, that's right. He's a full-time employee. So this is different. I got to talk to John a little bit differently. And so that gets messy and challenging. And I think that is tough. Some candidates love doing the gig thing. Some companies love doing the 1099 thing. I think if it continues to get out of hand, there's going to be more rules around it. That's my general view.
That's the government's job, I suppose. Let's talk a little bit about the mindset surrounding someone who would want to go work for a startup. So someone, or a company rather, that is seed stage or angel stage versus enterprise, or even a company that might be receiving Series B tranches of 20, 30, 40 million. Is there a different mindset surrounding those individuals that want to scale with a company versus just go work for an enterprise solution?
Absolutely, totally different candidate. If you are the type of person that likes a routine, I want to go to work, I want to do my job, then I want to come home, and then I want to make dinner at a certain time, and then I want to sit down with my husband and watch my little TV show, and then I want to get up in the morning and go to the gym.
You already sound boring.
And like if you want that life, then work for a Fortune 500 company, right? That's work for an established company that doesn't have a lot of mess going on. Not that people don't get laid off from big companies, but in general, it's just a different lifestyle.
Right.
And so if you like routine, if you like to be stable, with not a lot of massive changes, yeah, then do that. If you love risk, if you love change, if you like excitement and huge challenges and wearing a bunch of different hats and putting out fires and all of that, and you don't mind working more than 40 hours a week, and you're willing to do that and take some risk for a chance to maybe make some big money, then yeah, go for the startup life. Now, I would say that 90% of those people that do that are not going to end up being rich.
No,
So I always tell people, I'm like, don't do startup and small company because you think you're going to be rich. Do it because you love that lifestyle. You love that excitement and you enjoy that. Do it for that reason. And if you get some equity and you guys IPO and you become a billionaire, awesome. The chances of that happening are probably pretty damn slim. So don't do it for that reason. Do it for the lifestyle.
yeah, I love it.
We hardly ever move a lifelong big company candidate into a small company. Rarely do we, if we had a candidate that's worked for Coca-Cola for 20 years, and before that they worked for Johnson & Johnson, and then they call me and they say, hey, I saw this posting for this CFO for this startup position, and I want to go do that. I'm always like, bro, you have no idea. Your head's going to explode. Like
And because they're developing so much process at that stage and procedure, right? In those big enterprise companies, the procedure and process is there. Totally different animal.
You have like a procedure book for how to turn on the light switch, for God's sakes. I mean, yeah, they go to startup life and no.
So you have some very exciting things to talk about. You have a book.
We did. Yes.
Tell us all about the book.
Well, so the book is called The Riderflex Guide, Inspiring and Hiring, available on Amazon, paperback or Kindle. It came from the podcast. What happened was there's over 1,000 clips on our Riderflex podcast, over 1,000 clips. That includes
Did I make the book?
You're not in the book specifically named. Sorry. We should have done that. What it came from was all the daily tips that I recorded over the years.
Neat.
Where I'm giving advice, and then we pulled in some of the guest advice as well. So it really came from the podcast. Somebody had called me and said, man, your podcast, you got all this content and material. Why don't you put it into a book? I said, well, I'm not a writer, number one, and number two, I don't have time. And so, and they said, well, if you hire a ghostwriter, they can just listen to all of your podcasts for 6 months and put it into a book. And I said, okay, yeah, cool. Let's do that. So
how cool. Well, congratulations on that. Yeah, and our listeners can get that from Amazon. And we'll include a little link to it or the URL in the name of the book so that you've got it.
Some cool personal stories in there too. I talk a lot about things that have happened to me in my life and different personal stories. So it's very, it's not just business. It's got some true human element stuff to it. So it's
I think that's wonderful. You've talked to so many different people. You're so well known in the recruiting industry. You've got your book out now. And of course, we talk about, everything that we can do to help innovators and visionaries and disruptors succeed. Our area of focus, of course, is branding and marketing and the scalability, how we create awareness through integrated marketing communications. So brand becomes a very, very important component to recruiting people as well. Talk to us about what you have seen in the marketplace regarding perhaps a weak brand or a company that doesn't have a brand yet versus some of the brands that have a stronger foothold in the marketing and what that does to attract potential employees.
Yeah, great point. By the way, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur or if you're a group getting ready to start and you need to put together a brand strategy, call Lori.
Thank you. I appreciate
that. All candidates now, they're immediately going to look up your company online, right? They're going to just Google you. Do you have Instagram up? Do you have Facebook up? Do you have Twitter up? Do you have a LinkedIn account? On LinkedIn, is it like a real logo with a real company? Is the website good? Is your content on social media good? Are your Google reviews good? Are your Glassdoor reviews good? All of that matters, and most candidates check all of it, which speaks to brand image, brand reputation. If the brand doesn't have a good online presence and clear messaging about who they are and what our culture is, then it's not going to attract people, because this goes all the way back to what we talked about before, which is especially millennials. They want to work in a cool environment with a great culture, with maybe a cause that they're concerned about. That's the other thing,
Right.
companies should be clear about is what do they believe in and what are their causes? Because candidates today, especially younger candidates, they want that. They don't
Very
just
important.
want the paycheck, right? And man, if that is not clear with your branding, you need to get that in check. It's great. If your company is producing coffee mugs, right, and you make the best coffee mug in the whole world, I don't care if it's the most well-built coffee mug around. If you don't have cool branding around it, nobody's going to.
Yeah. I could not agree more. And thank you for the plug
both
there, by the way. I very much appreciate it. But there's so many components that we've talked about today, from the recruiting to the retention. We really didn't touch on DEI, but it becomes a very, very important component to the ethos of the brand and the culture that surrounds it. And really, from the standpoint of remote working versus in office, there's so many different topics that we've covered today. And I truly believe that it's going to be some great information for people to really take a look at, and just create a checkbox on whether or not they feel that their company or they themselves are checking these sort of things off the list. For those companies that still have questions about recruiting, how and what is the best way for them to get a hold of you, Steve, and your team?
Yeah, I'll give that real quick on diversity and equity, inclusion, and all of that stuff real quick, if you want me to mention something.
Sure.
I would give this advice to the companies. I'm speaking to the companies and the hiring managers. Be clear with your goals around DEI and share the goal with your internal recruiters or your external resource like a Riderflex. Be clear with what that goal is and share that information ahead of time. What happens a lot, Lori, is, especially for a recruiting firm like us, a company will have like a mission of some kind, like internally, secretly in their conference room. They're like, boy, we really need a
got the
minority.
plaque, check it off the list.
We don't have enough women, or we got all guys, or that's really, and they'll be talking about it. And then they'll hire a recruiting firm, but they're afraid to say anything because they don't want to break any laws or rules. So they don't tell the recruiting firm what they really need or what their goals are. So then the recruiting firm starts sending in people that they automatically reject, right? Even if they're qualified, because they're trying to fill this need. So the biggest advice I can give is just communicate clearly what the goals are, and communicate it legally, and say the right things, because you can't discriminate against the 55-year-old white guy, right? You have to include that guy too, but you can share goals. And if you communicate that clearly ahead of time in the search process, it's going to save a lot of time. So that's the biggest.
I appreciate that insight. It's very, very important.
Nothing wrong with goals, as long as you're not breaking any laws by discriminating against certain groups. That's the key. Riderflex, we ride in, you flex up. That's our tagline, by the way.
You're so good.
If you're looking for we are a small boutique generalist that handles all industries and all functions. If you need CEOs, we do that. But if you need 100 call center associate level people, we can do that as well. And we've done, we do things all across the country, and we have recruiters spread out across the US. So I always tell people, we haven't done brain surgeons, we haven't done astronauts, but we've done almost everything else.
I tell you, that's a pretty big lane that you've been working in. So congratulations on your success. Congratulations on the show, the book, your growth, which is
Well,
very,
thank you.
very exciting. You
Thank
now
you.
have recruiters, I think, in almost every state, right?
Yeah, we have 30 people involved totally. So yeah,
Yeah.
they're everywhere, every region for sure.
Yeah.
And congrats to you, my friend. We're gonna have to get together, lunch, happy hour, something
I know.
soon.
We're right around the corner from one
I
another.
know. I know.
Okay. It's
Right?
been such a pleasure, Steve. Thank you so much for your appearance on the Integrate and Ignite podcast.
Thank you, Lori.
This episode is complete. Head over to avocetcommunications.com for more ways to scale and grow your business. And be sure to tune in regularly for insights and motivation with host Lori Jones and her guests on the Integrate and Ignite Marketing Podcast.